So this week, we're talking about health and safety when it comes to HVAC. Again, we talked in the beginning of the semester about the air quality and how we want to condition the air inside the house for many reasons. What is the comfort temperature?
65 to 80.
Reasonably?
Right, is that
Yeah,
what you
that's
said?
reasonable. You want temperature between 65 to 80. What about humidity?
40, above like 42.
Between 40 to 60.
Yes.
40 in the winter because you have to add humidity. In the summertime, you'll get more humidity, so you have to take out some moisture from the air. So these are two things, and those things do kind of yield to other stuff. If the place is very hot and humid, what you're gonna have in the atmosphere? Mold, mildew, a lot of issues, a lot of dust, things growing where they're not supposed to be growing. If you have a lot of cracks in your house, a lot of infiltration, you're gonna let in a lot of pollens, a lot of dust, a lot of vermin. So that's something you want to think about. So we'll talk about all is connected. Think about the air, think about the pollutant. Now it's the law to have carbon monoxide detectors in your house in Massachusetts, because that's something people did not think about. People in low-income houses, usually they do not vent the windows as much. They try to conserve heat, and they end up having very low quality, and they have a buildup of carbon monoxide, and eventually it will develop. You will develop symptoms just like the flu. And if you stay longer, you might get sick. It might lead to death, depending on the concentration. Do no harm means don't use material that will be good for you economically, but in the long term will affect the people. For example, asbestos or furrion or something that will lead to other problems. Lead paint. We have a lot of stuff that we did not anticipate that will be really bad for you. If you smoke in your house, that's a bad idea. I mean, people knew that since the 90s, like smoking inside your house with closed windows is really bad for you because the smoke will stay in there, will ferment, and they even realized that second-hand smoke is as bad as smoking, and there's something called third-hand smoke, which is very bad for elderly and infants, which is basically the smell, not even the smoke. The smell itself and the particles are very bad for infants. So if you smoke, sometimes people, if you smoke, they tell you don't hold my vape. You know, it's the smell, it's the tobacco, it's all those chemicals that comes with smoking. And again, smoking cigarettes is different than smoking legal tobacco. There's a lot of elements of combustion that happens. I don't want to go too much into it, but again, there's a lot of toxic material. Toxicity is material that in certain concentration can harm your body. Where would things come to your body? Your skin, your pores, your digestive system, anywhere else, like your body is very fragile. We'll talk about also indoor pollutant, and we'll talk about radon gas, which is a natural gas that comes from the ground, but it has the ability to cause cancer over time. And it's very common in Massachusetts. There are some areas that you're not allowed to build houses on because of radon. How do you test for radon? It's really long test. So, question?
Is it like radioactive?
No, it's kind of like radioactive gas, but it's natural, comes between the rocks, and over time, being exposed to that will cause cancer. Biological particles. Again, we talked in the other class about ticks and bugs and stuff that can live inside your house, and some of them can live in your body. So, how do you seal your house with that? Asbestos. For the longest time, we use asbestos everywhere. These floor tiles here are asbestos. So most houses that were built in the 60s, they had a lot of asbestos going on. It's not a bad material as long as you don't have it airborne, meaning cutting and scraping this, it won't be a bad idea. That's what it will cost. I think the last time we got an estimate to change this floor probably will cost around $30,000 to scrape this floor and change it. So it's very expensive there. Moisture management. We talked about moisture management and how it's a battle. And if you have a lot of humidity, not only it's going to be bad for your health, but also it will promote the growth of bacteria and fungus. And people who live usually in very damp area, they get a lot of diseases. Have you ever heard of the consumption?
Mm-hmm.
This was very common in Ireland and some European areas where it's in the lowland where there's a lot of moisture. Eventually it will affect your respiratory system. And do you ever notice that in a humid day it's really hard to breathe? You feel shortness of breath. So moisture control is very important. So harmful substance, carbon monoxide, moisture is very harmful because again it promotes the growth of bacteria. The moisture will also condenses in your tank and form a puddle of water. And water is the best fuel for what?
Water.
Bacteria. So if you find sludge, sludge is bacteria. If you have an access to microscope, you'll see things moving around. If you put cheese under the microscope, you'll never eat cheese.
If you see cheese under the microscope, it's
What?
Yeah.
Cheese is old.
Yeah, it's moving. It's alive. So
cheese
it's,
is so good. Even when it's cold.
yeah, this is the best one it's called. Have you ever ate gorgonzola cheese with the green stuff in it? I was in Egypt once, and they sell this yogurt dish.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's gonna be gross.
Yeah, we're not gonna eat
It has maggots in it, and it's jumping. And this is how they eat it. It's fermented yogurt, and they love that.
Did
the
they
taste
just
of it.
like not take care of it, or? It's
No,
just
they want it to be sprayed. This is what makes it highly praised, that to be alive that has stuff in it.
Oh, that's gross.
Huh? No.
A lot of protein.
No.
No, he's not gonna eat it.
In Japan, they eat live fish. They have a restaurant where actually they serve you live fish, and you can feel the fish moving in your throat and
Ew.
your belly. And in Korea, they also eat live octopus, small live octopus, and sometimes you try to get out.
Climbs up, flies it about it.
Anyway, enough excitement? So accidents. Accidents is when you spill stuff where they're not supposed to be spilled. Oil. Your car might spill some oil, and fireplace can blow spillage. Your dryer, you can spill stuff, and collecting the stuff is very tough task. If you spill stuff on your garage from the car, good luck trying to get that out of the cement. So it's better also have prevention and anticipate what could happen. So if you have an oil tank inside the garage here, what would be the best idea to prevent accidents? Guard the tank with cement wall. You know, the garage sometimes you come half sleepy from a long day of work and you're gonna bump into the oil tank.
Well, legally, you can't have an oil tank.
You can,
Really?
but you have to have a barrier.
Oh, that's what I mean.
Yeah, you have to have a barrier. But you know what happens? You put the barrier there, then the inspection comes and give you the check mark, and he leaves, and you take the wire out. And because you need more room, you bought a big, huge truck. It's not sticking out of the garage, so you move the barrier, and things happen. So usually things have become per code until somebody over time forgets why it's there. I told you 2 times I went to people to do no heat call, and I found boilers with stuff all over the burner, boxes, storage, I had to jump and move stuff to get it to the boiler. And I told the guy, you know, this thing actually needs to breathe. You know, there's fire inside.
You do that for a living?
Huh?
You do that for
Not for
living?
fun.
Oh.
I do it for fun, not fun.
Oh, I thought you.
No, I did that. I'm certified, but I just don't do it. I like to pick and choose. No, I'm not doing this. But anyways, it's so people forget that this is fire and this need to breathe, and the code is 5 feet. You don't put anything combustible close to an oil burner within 5 feet. That's gonna be one of the questions in the oil burner exam. So no wood, no paper, no anything combustible within 5 feet of the boiler.
Oil burner or any type of burner, like
Any, even gas. Gas
What about
or
a
oil.
wall?
Huh?
What about
A wall is gonna be one behind it, and it has to be at least a foot. And it has to be non-combustible. You cannot put a plywood behind the boiler.
What do you mean, like you could put sheetrock?
Sheetrock,
fire resistant.
fire resistance, or you can put bricks, but no.
But a foot.
Huh? A foot, it has to be a
away
foot,
from each
yeah.
wall.
Yeah.
And the flue,
Yes,
too, right? A foot.
yes. The flue gets really hot, so you gotta pay attention to that. So combustion, that's when you get a lot of carbon monoxide. What is the result of combustion? Carbon dioxide, water, and carbon monoxide. If if you have incomplete combustion. And you can also have sulfur oxide. So combustion can be a bad idea to have around living space. Tobacco smoke is very dangerous. We talked about that a lot. I mean, it's the residuals, it's the whatever happened out of the combustion, and we talked about different products come from different temperature, right? So depending on how you burn the tobacco or whatever material you have different products coming into your house. Carbon monoxide, nitrogen oxide, also two results of combustion. I've seen in a lot of places, guys, and pay attention to that. Never have a gas burner firing into a house. It's one of the stupidest things ever. Like if you have a gas burner that's supposed to be for open space, for workers, it's outdoors. You do not put that indoors at all.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're really waiting for an accident. And I've seen that in a few places where they have fire. Salamander, they call it Salamander. It's a company. They fire like into the room. Do not do that. VOC is volatile organic compounds. Write that down. It's going to be the final, because again, it's one of those things that has been banned recently. Where would you find that? Volatile organic compound. Carpets, new hydrocarbon material. You know the new car smell?
Yeah.
That's VOC.
Yeah.
And they banned that. So that now new cars do not smell like that anymore.
And you said carpets.
Carpets, yeah. Like when you put new carpets, vinyl, any kind of organic material or a hydrocarbon product that has been emitting a lot of smell. Question.
I'm sorry. So you said the VOC, the new car smell, is toxic?
Yeah, they changed that 5 years ago. That's why new cars do not smell like they used to anymore. They don't use vinyl in cars anymore. Do you notice that?
Why?
There's a lot of, it's again, with the sun to react and give you a lot of VOC. So that's not good for you. You're gonna spend 6 months breathing that in front of you all the time. No good. You know what else that people don't pay attention to?
What?
Air fresheners, guys.
Really?
It has a lot of bad stuff for you.
What does?
Air fresheners. So if you want to buy the air freshener, make sure you get it from good company. Do not get those cheaper ones, because you don't know what kind of chemicals they're putting in there that you're breathing into your lungs.
You mean like ozone spray kind of?
Huh?
Like air? Well, I mean,
The glade, the stuff. You gotta read the crap they have in the lid, and especially in the car, because it's a very confined space.
Yeah.
You're gonna be breathing this all the time. So over years, you gotta pay attention to what you're putting into your lungs, what you put into your body. I mean, do some research, man. Now that the information is all
Candles
under
are terrible.
under your
Candles.
fingertips. Candles are bad because you're breathing wax. If it's a small place.
Not only that, in America, they don't make you put the bad shit on it, but overseas where they send them, there's
Yeah.
another label underneath that has to have it all on.
Yeah, I mean, again, there's a lot of consumer stuff, protection, but it's not their fault. You bought it, you put it there, nobody forced you. You have choices. So think about that. So volatile organic compound, think about what you put into your lungs, what are you breathing. Especially if you have kids. Kids are more vulnerable to these things because the body is very fragile. Lead paint, you heard about the lead paint issues and how it's bad for you. So pay attention to that. 1 second. Fine dust particles, they are the most dangerous. Why?
it's easier to get into your body.
That's one. What else?
It eats away at the lining of your lungs.
Yes, it cuts through your lungs slowly, and it eats through your alveoli, and eventually gets some wedge stuff into your lungs. And once you cut through your lungs, you become more vulnerable to stuff. So people who actually smoke and get exposed to asbestos, they are more susceptible to cancer than people who do not smoke and work with asbestos. Because again, those fine little particles in the smoke, they're cutting through your lungs. So they are the most dangerous. They're air suspended, and usually they're not natural. I mean, the most thing you can get out of pollens is allergies, but it doesn't actually cause you to have cancer. They stay deep in the lungs, and sometimes they do not leave and do not get wedged out. Again, sharp cutting into your lungs. And finally, radon, which is a natural gas, usually in rocky soil, that comes from the ground and go through your basement. So, if you have an old house with basement made out of concrete, or even like a wood lodge, what is the best way to counteract radon?
Exhaust fan,
That's gonna cost you a lot of money to heat the house.
seal it.
Sealing, that's the best thing you do, is just seal the entire basement. They have some kind of tarp that is not permeable, air cannot go through it. So you got to seal the basement. They also have sealing paint, where you can paint the basement with something that will seal the pores, because cement is not sealant. Cement actually is porous. Over time, things will go through. If you put water, it will go through cement. Question? No. So toxins. Combustion byproducts, once again, we're gonna do combustion. All New England needs combustion for heating. At some point, you're gonna burn something. Either gas, oil, or wood, or even heavy fuel. So be aware of unvented combustion places. Make sure the vents are sealed. The flue pipe is sealed, there is no cracks in it, and it's not giving off carbon monoxide. And if you have a furnace or a hot air system, probably you have to check your vent very well. If it smells funny to you, something is broken. The heat exchanger inside the air handling unit is cracked, and over time, whatever combustion gas you have in your boiler, in your furnace, is gonna go to your living space. So it's good to annually go and test the air coming out of your furnace. Go with a CO tester, a CO2 tester. Those testers are very inexpensive. A CO tester is like $15. And they have smoke testers now that have a battery that lasts for 10 years. So these are really important for you to have around the house. Gas ranges, if you still have that in your house, they are very susceptible to leak, and they can produce also carbon monoxide. How? When you put a pot and you disturb the flame from burning completely, it will produce carbon monoxide, and it will be very bad for your health and well-being. Combustion gas heaters, do not use those. Those are a no-go. If you see it in anybody's house, just leave. Backdrafting. What is backdrafting?
When it drafts back into your house?
Yes. Instead of going through the flue pipe is clogged. Some squirrels had a conspiracy against you. They broke all the nuts and they jammed the chimney, which happens sometimes. Some animal crawled into your chimney and got stuck in there. It's not open completely. There's a lot of leaves. So you want to clean the chimney before you burn stuff. Also, most chimneys have a mesh top to protect this from coming inside. That mesh sometimes gets filled up with leaves. So make sure, and birds build nests in there. So make sure that before you start the season, go and check that the vent is open. Because sometimes you'll have some backdraft. Cracked heat exchanger, that's one of the most problematic issues with furnaces. So you're trying to get your flue gas coming out of your house. So let's say that is my air handling unit. This goes to your living space. And you have flue gas here. This is fine. So what it's supposed to do is the air here is supposed to exchange some heat by running through hot pipes. What happens is if you have a crack in one of those pipes, you're gonna leak some flue gas pipes into your vent, and it's very common because those heat exchangers are subjected to a lot of heat, sometimes up to 400 to 600 degrees Fahrenheit. And also, when you burn petrochemicals, you have a lot of acidity. You have sulfur acid. Sulfur acid will eat through the metal. So eventually, it's something that's going to happen. But how do you detect that? So, what do? Usually, you go with a combustion tester and test the flue pipe here. One of the other ways you can do it is you try to block the vent and see if there's a pressure coming out. Or you can do also a smoke test test the crack. Depending on how big the crack is and what is the back pressure, it's sometimes really difficult to find, but there are also dyes you can inject into the boiler and see if there's any leak coming up. And the complaint usually is a funny smell. People smell really funny smell from the vent coming in. So probably it is the air. And the other problem is if it's not that much and it's not that concentrated, it goes and spreads out and mixing with the air, so you don't even smell it, but it's there. Carbon monoxide or dioxide or sulfur or whatever. So it's good to have some kind of pressurized, depressurized zones near the furnace. So if your furnace is placed in your basement and it's not sealed, by sealed I mean does it get the air from the outside directly or not? So if it's not sealed, where is it getting the air from? The basement. So if the basement has no opening in it at all, where is it? It's not going to get any air. When you have a fireplace and you turn the fireplace on, you always have to crack a window. I did the mistake when I cracked a window, and eventually the house was very pressurized, and you have some kind of backdraft. There is not being able to go because there's no displacement of the air. You will have a vacuum inside the living room or wherever you have your fire space. So when you turn on your fire space, a lot of air is being sucked into the chimney. If you don't provide the proper venting, it's not going to work properly, and you'll have some backdraft. And again, funny story. If you sleep with an area with a room that has a really high carbon dioxide, you're gonna have bad dreams. Yeah, that's been scientifically proven. After a big meal, bad quality air, you'll have really some funky dreams because your body is trying to like wake you up and get you out of there because it's being paralyzed. So think about that. If you're having that dream that you can't get up, probably the room is really ill-ventilated. There's not enough ventilation. There's not enough oxygen.
Really? So if I have sleep paralysis, that's what's really
Possible.
Wow.
Very possible. Yeah. And actually, they do have sleep. You could also have sleep apnea. You should go to a sleep doctor. They hook you up to a machine and see how you sleep. It's fun what they can do. So blockage. Blockage does happen in the chimney. What is the blockage as a result of? Besides squirrels and leaves and whatever. Birdnest, what else? Soot will accumulate over time and be as big as bricks and very strong. Like charcoal, you have to go and chisel that out. You will be surprised. Now, and once you start building stuff, if you don't clean properly, this is your chimney. Once you start building up stuff here, at some point, it's gonna keep building quicker. The first layer is the hardest because it's kind of like, it looks like cake or like volcanic rocks. Then it will build more and more, and eventually you'll have no opening. And again, these jobs are very fun to work with. I'm being sarcastic. Because you're gonna be in the middle of the chimney, you're gonna go with a big long chisel and try to break that out into pieces. So it is tough. There's a lot of chimneys actually and fireplace that has been mothballed because of that reason. Okay, this is too much to work with, it's not working out very well, so let it be. And again, remember this, if you're ever going to install a new boiler, make sure you don't count in the chimney. Try to, as much as possible, do sealed installation where the air is coming from outside and you vent it outside directly, and avoid using the chimney, even if it's the old one was in the chimney.
So there's no chemical that can use for.
To a limit you can do it chemically, but not all the time. When it's that big and that like calcified, you have to go on and mechanically remove that. Some boilers that have been neglected for years, you have to go there with a chisel and brushes and spend a few hours trying to clean that boiler out and be very careful not to break the heat exchanger. That's some of the stuff we have to deal with. So draft should be between 0.04 and 0.2 inches of water. You don't have to remember that now. When we do our combustion test, we're gonna use something like that. Next semester, we'll do complete combustion test, which should be done every year. So you go with a machine that will measure the draft over the fire and on the chimney. That tells you that if we have good flow of air in the pipe or not. So we'll do combustion testing, and colder outdoor temperature should produce higher chimney draft. Why? Big pressure difference. Hot air coming up to pull faster than if it's not as cold. And cold air is very dense, so it's easy to push things through using gravity. Major pressure difference between the outdoor and combustion zone should not exceed 4 to 5 Pascal. Again, you don't have to worry about that much now. We'll do that next semester when we do combustion testing. CO testing again, you will have some CO in your chamber. No matter how hard you try, there's some, but not a lot. And you don't want it inside your house. So it's the largest cause of injury because does it have a smell?
No.
No, does it have a smell? Is it heavier than air? Yes.
Yeah.
So it will sink in. It's not going to go out of the window. It's going to stay there. So it's heavy. It's have no smell, and people do not pay attention to it. Ideally, you want 0 in the house. 5 to 50 ppm if you have a gas range or a gas stove. 20 or 50 is acceptable, depending on how long is the exposure. There's 500 deaths a year because of CO poisoning. What makes CO very toxic? So what makes it very toxic is that it unites with your hemoglobin in the red blood cells and prevent the blood cells from taking oxygen. So you'll suffocate. So when you see those, in some movies when somebody sit in the car in the garage and turn it on and they're trying to kill themselves, that's what they're doing. Slowly you pass out and you just die because your body, all your blood is saturated with carbon monoxide, and eventually you get dizzy. Why? For those people who used to smoke or smoke, why when you smoke sometimes you get dizzy? That's the carbon monoxide. It's not the tobacco. Yeah, because when you're burning your cigarette, you're not doing complete combustion. So there's a lot of CO coming in. And I remember in the late 80s, there was the law that you put the amount of CO coming into your lungs from smoking. Yeah. The dizziness? But it's different dizziness than CO.
I thought the dizziness was you cutting off your body's oxygen flow.
That's because you have CO, because you have carbon monoxide.
Oh, yeah.
And carbon monoxide takes 30 minutes to clear out of your lungs or your body, and 8 hours to completely come out of your system. So it sticks to your blood stream before you can clear up the carbon monoxide from your body. So that's why it's really fatal. Symptoms similar to flu. People think they have the flu, but actually they have carbon monoxide. Again, blocks the blood hemoglobin to react to oxygen, so they saturate with carbon monoxide, so you cannot absorb any more oxygen. It causes drowsiness, headache, and vomiting. If you feel drowsy one day, if you have a headache in your house, think about that. Put one and one together. Probably if you're drowsy, you're not going to think, but just get outside. If you go outside the house and you feel better, you know something is bad from the outside, from the inside. The house is kind of blocked. And this happens a lot in the winter because people crank up their heat and they don't want to open the windows because they don't want to lose the heat. So the EPA allows 9 ppm for 8 hours. 9 ppm in the air, so they did the calculation and they think, okay, that's acceptable. For 8 hours, it's not going to be that much into your body. So do you have carbon monoxide coming from the car? Yeah. So that's why you feel much better when you go into the countryside and there's a lot of cars, and you exercise and you get some fresh air. Over time, you feel like your body is cleansing.
Like near the ocean too.
Yeah. And that's why I feel bad for people trying to run in the street when there's a lot of cars. So really, you're not doing your body a favor now. And that's why you're going to get tired faster. So it's good to select a good place where there's not a lot of combustion going on. And that's another argument actually about why it's better to use electrical cars even though we are still using coal to produce electricity. But at least we will have the combustion in one controlled space, not distributed over the living space. You don't want to live in a place with cars going around you dispensing carbon monoxide all over the place. Okay? Again, more about carbon monoxide. It's, again, remember it's a law to have it in your house. If the house has to be inspected, you will have to check that you have a detector. It's very common in low-income housing, at least 20%, because again, they rely a lot on closing the windows and stove ranges, gas ranges. There are digital testers. In a vented location, you can have as much as 100 ppm. So you can grill, but it has to be a vented location. That's why you do not grill inside, you grill outside, because you will have carbon monoxide. An vented location has to be up to 0. You can have, if you have a gas stove, you want to have it vented outside. So if you have an electric stove, you can get away with those filter tops, it's okay. But if you have a gas stove, it has to have vented outside. Otherwise, it's a no-go. How do we get CO? Carbon monoxide. Flame interference, what does that mean?
When you're not getting flame, something's keeping you from getting the flame.
The flame is being interfered
Something's
with.
getting in the way of it.
Yes, okay, good description. So if you see, this is your gas stove, this is your flame. You put a pot on top of it and the flame is hitting the pot, you have interfered with the complete flame. So this is the complete flame. If you cut it from here, it's incomplete. So I simplify it, and that's when you get carbon monoxide. Same thing in your boiler. If your boiler or furnace is the flame hitting the walls, you're getting a lot of smoke and carbon monoxide. Limiting the wall combustion chamber, inadequate combustion air. You're gonna have enough air coming into the chamber, so it's gonna be inadequate, and you're gonna have some carbon monoxide. Also backdrafting of a combustion chamber. Okay, I will stop here for today and finish the rest on Wednesday. Thank you.